Welcome to the Schools of Excellence podcast, a place for insightful conversations about building sustainable schools of excellence. Join me each week as we explore the importance of leading with your values, creating impact, and leaving a lasting legacy. My goal on the show is to provide you with clarity, elevate your mindset, and equip you with practical strategies and inspiration. I'm Chanie, a proud mother of four, a former New Yorker, now savoring sunny Florida vibes. With a professional journey spanning 18 years across all levels of school leadership, I bring nuanced insight that delve into the intricate details of running a center, as well as the broader visionary aspects of leadership. Thank you for joining me for this conversation. Let's build a legacy of excellence together. Hello there, and welcome back to the Schools of Excellence podcast. Today is the first week of October, and October is actually Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And in today's podcast, I'm going to really be diving into why it's okay to be okay. Today is a personal story, different from our kind of usual programming on Schools of Excellence. It's actually a deeply personal story about my journey through pregnancy loss and the unexpected lessons that it has taught me about healing and endurance. So in today's conversation, I'm really going to share with you how I navigated the roller coaster of emotions, from the joy of a positive pregnancy test to the heartbreak of loss. We're going to walk through the power of support, the importance of self-care, and really just the very complex process of healing. Most importantly, what I want today's conversation to be about is why it's okay to be okay. That even after experiencing something profoundly difficult, it's not about getting over it, but it's about finding a new way to honor our losses while still embracing life. So whether you've experienced loss yourself or you're supporting someone who has, I hope that this episode offers a lot of comfort for you, a lot of understanding, and just a new perspective on what it means to heal. Of course, if you're in a season right now of intense grief, maybe this is not the right time for you to listen. This might be a triggering episode, so please, as always, take good care of yourself. So Mayer was out of town. Late May, he went out of town with Mendel to New York for a dad's trip, and I was waiting for Mayer to get back because I wanted to take the pregnancy test together. And the joy of seeing the positive test, especially right after Mayer's father's passing, was we felt it so profoundly, and it brought so much comfort to both of us. We, of course, excitedly shared the news with my parents, with Mayer's mother, and everyone was just really overjoyed. So after the first couple weeks, I booked my routine sonogram appointment, and we had tickets to fly to California on vacation on July 8th. Our older kids, Mendel and Goldie, were in overnight camp at the time. We had our two younger kids, Hyla and Yessie. My sister was flying in from New York to take care of them, and we were going to go to California for a week on vacation. And I really wanted to get the sonogram before we flew out on July 8th, but our calendars could not sync up, and we just could not find a spot. So I had booked the first sonogram appointment for July 15th at 9:30 in the morning, right when we came back from LA. Now, throughout the beginning weeks of the pregnancy, I had severe morning sickness, nausea, vomiting, all the usual early signs of pregnancy, all the good things, which bring about just the great joy of a beautiful new child. And as we were kind of nearing the trip, I was really hoping that by the time the trip came, I wouldn't be feeling so sick. And it was fantastic. We went on the trip. I wasn't sick at all. And we just enjoyed an amazing, amazing vacation. So Monday morning, we had come back Sunday on the red eye. Monday morning at 9:30 in the morning, I was in the doctor's office, checked in. And at 9:46, Dr. Kathy walked in. The nurse who was there was in the middle of conducting the sono. Kathy walks in, she gives me a big hug, congrats, so good to see you. And then she walks over to the sonogram screen to see what's going on with the nurse. And they're both kind of looking at the screen quietly. And I'm actually enjoying the quiet. It was a very hectic morning. And I'm just enjoying the peace. And then I open my eyes and I see Kathy starting to move away from the screen. And she kind of starts walking around the table closer to me. And her face tells me everything that I have to know. And I kind of pull my hand out and I tell her, no, don't come near me. And it was almost like this moment of like, if you don't come near me and I don't hear what you have to say, then anything that's coming out of your mouth is false. So she comes closer to me. She takes my hand and she tells me, Chanie, the baby doesn't have a heartbeat. It stopped 10 days ago. And not only did the world just completely go black in that moment, I immediately started grasping onto my chest. I felt my throat closing up. And Kathy saw me, and she starts fanning me. She's like, go get water. And she's holding on to me. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay. Like, I was starting sweating. And in a blur of just everything, she takes me into the other room and she starts going over all these different options and these different decisions that I need to make in this moment. And I tell her, listen, I cannot make any decisions right now. I need to go home. I need to tell my husband what's going on. We need to have a conversation together. I'll call you back later today. So on the way home, my brain is like in a million different directions. I actually am scheduled to give a keynote on Wednesday afternoon. I was doing a workshop, and Thursday morning I was doing the keynote at the Educations Conference in Connecticut. My flight was supposed to leave Tuesday afternoon the next day. And here my options are: go for surgery. Like, there's so many different options. So I come home, and Mayor and I are just really kind of sitting in our own space together. And after we both kind of calmed down, I said, we need to reach out to our mentor. So for those of you that don't know, because I speak about this quite often, Mayor and I have a family mentor that we connect with, and we've actually had this mentor since we got married 15 years ago. We each have our own mentors as well, spiritual leaders. But this is a mentor that we both turn to when we're dealing with something with our marriage or with parenting, or we're to send the kids to school or education or whatever it is. It's family issues. So we call up our mentor, and he was just an incredible source of comfort in that moment. Just really holding space, shared his own experience that he had gone through this with his wife. And just, it was so grounding. And I find, like, from that moment until we spoke to him on the phone, like, I felt like the earth was closing up on me. And the moment we were on the phone with him, it was like, okay, like, we're going to get through this. So after a couple minutes, he's like, okay, take out a pen and paper. Let me give you guys some questions to ask the doctor. So he asked us how many weeks I was and all the things. And I gave him all the information. He's like, okay, here are the questions. Here's what to ask for. Here's what to look out for. Here, if the doctor says this, ask this follow-up question. He really just guided us exactly how we can communicate with the doctor to get all the information that we needed so that Mayor and I can make an informed decision together as a couple. So after all the back and forth, I ended up scheduling a DNC for Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, I was scheduled to speak on Wednesday afternoon at the conference, and I spoke to the doctor multiple times, and I was like, what is my recovery like after surgery? Am I going to be able to get on a plane? Am I going to be able to get up and speak? She's like, listen, honey, like, I can't guarantee anything. Most people recover within, 48 hours after surgery. You'll have to see what you feel like. I was like, all right, I'm not canceling yet. Let me see what I feel like. Let me take it moment by moment. So after I finally made the decision, I was like, okay, that's what we're doing tomorrow morning. That's when I was like, okay, I need support. I have a very important standard, almost like a rule in my life, that I do not go through hard things alone. That when I am going through something difficult or I'm navigating something, I reach out to my friends. I reach out to our mentors. I reach out to our support system, because that is what community is there for. And Mayor and I are both huge members of our community. We love to give, we love to contribute. And that's a big part of what it means to really be part of a community, that there are moments when you're going to be on the giving side and you're going to be contributing, and there are moments where you're going to be on the receiving side, and you need your friends and family to carry you when you physically can't hold yourself up. So in that moment, I immediately texted 3 of my really good friends. Each one of them sprang into action in a very different way. One of my friends actually brought over a beautiful care package, which I'll talk about in a moment. And she also took our 2 younger kids for the night, because Mayor and I had to be in the hospital at 5 o'clock in the morning. So our kids went over to our house for a sleepover. They were super excited about it. Another one of my friends came over just to sit with me on the couch, just for basically like half the night. And then another one of my friends arranged dinner. So there were a couple of things that I learned just from those couple of text messages that I'd sent out to my friends. In our community, there are all these different programs to support people in the community going through different seasons of life. So when someone loses a parent, or when someone has a baby, or when someone is marrying off a child or has a bar mitzvah, or all the different cycles of life, the community steps up. Now, I had no idea that there was also a program that for pregnancy loss. And when my friend came over with this care package, it had, it was signed that it was from the community. And I messaged my friend about it. She's like, oh, yeah, this person in the community, she creates care packages for people that go through pregnancy loss. She had gone through it and she wanted to create something in the community that when someone goes through this, they should be able to get something beautiful. I got a absolutely beautiful spa package that I used that night. It was full of all these just little self-care things, which was very welcomed in that moment. And it also came with a beautiful book of inspiration. And it came with a lot of there was a lot of inspiration, a lot of spiritual guidance, a lot of guidance from, what does Torah and Judaism have to say about pregnancy loss. And I found it so comforting to read that book. I read it back to back that night. There was different insights for the mom, for the dad, for, just all these different things. If you ended up telling your children, we chose not to tell our children. At this time. So, it was it gave so much perspective and education, which was phenomenal. So the next morning we came to the hospital at 5 o'clock, all the just pre-op stuff and everything. The hospital team was absolutely phenomenal. The best nurses, amazing doctors. Like, I'm just unbelievably grateful for how I was treated and taken care of in the hospital. Being wheeled out of the hospital, buckled over in such excruciating pain, on ridiculously high painkillers, with contractions and bleeding, and no baby. That was another huge moment where I was like, oh my God, this is real. All the pain, all the discomfort, all the things that comes postpartum, it's all worth it when you're holding a baby in your hands. But when you walk out empty handed, there aren't words to really describe what it feels like. And I'd called up the doctor and she told me, she's like, you'll probably experience contractions for about a week or so. But she's like, anyone that's been pregnant, it's like, well, everything's normal. She's like, well, it could be for longer. You should bleed for about 2 to 3 weeks, but, and everything's normal. So it could go on for longer. And one of the things that I learned only after going through this experience was, postpartum exists for a reason. Like, a woman needs time to recover physically, mentally, emotionally from childbirth. Because I didn't have an actual childbirth here, and I carried the baby for 11 weeks, but I still had, pregnancy hormones, and they had to leave my body. And so while I went straight back to work, my body was still very much in a postpartum state. And so that time frame, while I was back at work, operating on calls, doing business, making decisions, taking care of the family, all of those things, while in intense postpartum. And I really struggled a lot with postpartum anxiety, which I'll go into, shortly. So I ended up choosing to fly to the conference. On the stage in the middle of my keynote, this is like barely 48 hours after surgery, I had a terrible contraction that started in my back. It was going down my legs. And I'm standing there on stage and I'm in the middle of speaking. I'm in front of 500 people and I am feeling this pain. And all I want to do is buckle over and just get on my hands and knees. And I take a deep breath and I pause. And I take that deep breath with the audience. And I breathe through the contraction. It passes through me. And I finish the keynote. And while I didn't socialize or go to any of the other events, I spoke and I left. I'm so glad that I did that. Afterwards, when I was speaking to a mentor, and he was like, going to speak at that conference was quite possibly the best antidepressant that you could have ever taken. And he's right, so spot on, because going into a place and being of service and giving back and contributing in that kind of way to the educational world that I'm so passionate about right before the school year started, it was so fulfilling and meaningful. It gave me such a sense of purpose going out there and sharing what I did. In the weeks right after in the weeks right after the miscarriage, my brain fog was so intense. I could not focus, make a decision. I was just, it was so debilitating for me. And especially someone like myself, I have a calendar, I'm disciplined, I'm structured, I have my things. And here I am staring at my calendar, and all I want to do is cry. I'm like, this is so overwhelming. I don't want to do anything, clear my calendar. I don't know when I want to go back to work. Like, it was so intense. And I knew that that I wanted to figure this out. And I practice what I preach. Everything starts with your calendar, right? And so if my commitments and my priorities are messed up with my calendar, I'm not going to be able to show up in the ways that I want to show up. And so I reached out to my business mentor, Todd, and I was like, I need an hour. Could you help me organize and prioritize my calendar? Now, it was a super busy season for him. He was traveling, he was speaking, he was on vacation with his family. So graciously made an hour available on his calendar on super short notice, and just really helped me prioritize my calendar. Okay, what's first? What's second? What does a leveraged activity mean? What should your activity look like right now? What should be subtracted? What should be deleted? What gets put on pause? All of it in 1 hour. I left the call and I felt the brain fog being lifted, as you know, as we were kind of navigating the conversation, because my calendar made sense now. After that conversation, I started to recognize a lot of my old survival habits creeping up. So for those of you that know, I had about 3 years ago, well, yeah, like about 3 years ago, I had intense burnout, very intense burnout. I was getting sick. It was about every 10 days to 14 days. I was getting sick. I was running high fever, just ridiculous burnout. And I spent the last 3 years really recovering from burnout. Um, like completely revamp my calendar, what I commit to, what I say yes to, what I say no to, all of that. So one of the things that I was recognizing that I was doing in this season was I was distracting myself a lot. So not only could I not focus, but I was constantly taking my phone out. I was constantly scrolling. I was getting distracted. I couldn't sit still on the couch. My kids would want me to read them a story. Couldn't read them a story. Just couldn't finish a book. Like, I just was constantly getting distracted. Or I was distracting myself. And that for me is my red flag. My body's getting into survival mode. Like, it's feeling in survival. And these are the default habits that I've known for so long, and I'm grasping onto them again. So I reached out to my therapist, who's also a grief specialist, and we did 2 sessions together where she really helped me choose a ritual that would ground me again. We worked through specific exercises, that would help me the moment I started choosing the maladaptive behaviors to choose different ones where I wasn't going to get myself back into the survival state. We worked through specific journal prompts and other exercises so that I shouldn't suffer from PTSD. She educated me on that. You know, what is PTSD? What does it mean to be hijacked by your emotions? How do we make sure that you don't suffer from PTSD? You don't have to. And I think it was so interesting when we were on that call. You know, it was like, you don't have to get into a place of such intense survival because of this loss that you need 3 years to recover. You don't have to go through like such intense trauma that you have PTSD. There are things that you could do proactively that ensure that you shouldn't have to experience this. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity to be able to have that conversation so vulnerably. Like, just, she really, really helped me get anchored. Um, One of the other things, that Mayor did was he bought me a beautiful ring. It's a double heart ring. I wear it every single day. And for me, the ring, you know, it's, um, excuse me. For me, one of the things about the double heart ring was, you know, another friend of a different friend of mine who, had also gone through pregnancy loss. She was like, you know, she had gone through multiple, miscarriages. She's like, you know, each experience was something different. For some, it was like she just wanted to forget about it, move on. For some, she kind of, you know, wanted to hold on to it more. And for me, the double heart is symbolic of the baby's heart only beat inside of mine. And while we have these, I saw a quote actually, when I was scrolling on social media, and you know, God bless the algorithms. When I started searching for podcast on miscarriage, you know, now they start putting all these things in your feed. So one of the things in my feed was, some say you're too painful to remember, I say you're too precious to forget. I held you every second of your life. Heaven and earth may separate us today, but nothing will ever change the fact that you are my child. So when I read that, I was like, I need something that's going to anchor me. And this is one of the things that Mayor ended up choosing, and I absolutely love it, and it's perfect for me. Um, I want to share just a little bit more of what it means to be okay versus what it means to get over it, and also the many moments where I just really saw God's hand just guiding me and holding us through this process. So when when we were supposed to go to California and I couldn't get that doctor's appointment before we went, I was really frustrated because I'm like, I really wanted to go to the doctor before we fly. And it just didn't work out, right? I ended up going after. And, when I had spoken to the doctor afterwards, when I came back to get checked after the surgery, I had told her that, we were supposed to go to California. And she's like, listen, if you came to me, the day before you flew, the baby's heartbeat had already stopped at that point, and you would have been making the same decisions that you made a week and a half ago. And I probably would not have let you get on that plane to go, to California. You would have had to do the surgery and then recovered and then gone. But by that point, we wouldn't have been able to. That was the only week that my sister was able to come. That was the only week that made sense in our schedule for us to go. And so, this was just absolutely God's protection of like, I am not going to let you get this appointment so that you have absolutely no idea what's going on. You're going to go on this amazing vacation because the baby's heartbeat already stopped. You're not pregnant anymore. So you don't have any of these pregnancy, symptoms. I have all the hormones, but you don't have the nausea or the vomiting or, any of those symptoms anymore. Go enjoy the vacation. When you come back, we'll take care of it. The other piece also was different. There's all different kinds of pregnancy loss and miscarriages. The one that I had is called a missed miscarriage, which means basically the baby's heartbeat stops, but the fetus is still inside the womb. So some people, when they experience pregnancy loss, they start bleeding immediately, and that's kind of a usual signal of like, oh, go to the hospital, something's wrong. I didn't have that. I only started bleeding after the D&C, and so to me, that was such a huge hug from God of like, I wanted you guys to have this vacation. I wanted you guys to have this time together, even though I have, something else planned for you guys when you get back. So when I think about being okay versus being over it, I think about a couple of moments for me. One of them was, I don't remember the exact day, but it was like Mayor had said something funny, and he's always saying something funny, and every single day he makes me laugh. But after the pregnancy loss, it was really difficult to find joy. And I remember this one time where I genuinely laughed. Like my stomach was hurting because I was belly laughing. And I was like, oh, this feels good. This feels good to laugh again. Another big moment for me when I was like, I'm going to be okay, was the first day that I did a full 24 hours without crying. And I was like, okay, full day, 24 hours, no crying. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Another big moment was I hadn't touched my guitar basically since the loss. And a couple of weeks ago, on Saturday night, Mayor taking the kids to the synagogue on Saturday afternoon, and then he came home after Shabbat was over. So when he walked in, I was playing guitar, and Kyla comes in running first, and she's like, "Mommy, you're playing again!" And Yossi comes running over, and he's like, "Come, let's play our favorite song together." And Mayor smiling, he's like, "Yeah." And he comes over, and he's like, "It's good to see you playing again." And of course, I started crying. But that was a reminder of like, oh, I'm pulling up my hobbies again. I'm choosing the things that make me happy again. So what is really the difference between being okay versus getting over it, right? When I think about being okay, it's the acceptance of my reality of the loss. It's my ability to function in daily life, even though I'm still in pain. It has been finding new meaning and purpose, incorporating it into my life experiences. It has been the ability to truly feel the range of emotions, of sadness, of joy, of grief, of laughter. When I think of what it means to get over it, it's kind of this misconception that if you heal, it means that you forget or you no longer feel pain, or the idea that there should be a point that I reach where the loss will no longer impact me. These are just not true, right? There's a ton of societal pressures to move on from the experience, but it's not about moving on or getting over it. It's being okay. And we never truly get over any loss. 1 in every 4 women will experience pregnancy loss. That's a pretty high statistic. And it's when I did a second session with my therapist, and I had told her, I was like, I have these moments where I'm feeling okay. And then I have this wave of guilt of like, how can I be okay? And she paused and she's like, there's a book. It's called Why It's Okay to Be Okay. And she's like, I want to write a book, Why It's Okay. There's a book called Why It's Okay to Not Be Okay. She's like, I want to write the book, Why It's Okay to Be Okay. That you can be okay, even when you're experiencing loss and heartbreak and grief. And it was kind of this moment where I was like, wow, like even when I'm smiling and I'm okay, it doesn't mean that I've forgotten. It doesn't mean that I've moved on. It doesn't mean that I don't feel pain again. I'm choosing joy in this moment. I'm choosing to be okay in this moment. Um, there were a couple of other like care packages that have come out that came to us during the weeks that followed. 2 days after the surgery, Mayor had called an organization. It's called A Time, and it's they specialize in fertility and pregnancy loss. And he got on the phone and he's like, my wife and I just experienced this. I just wanted to call if you have any resources or how you could support us. And they sent him they sent an email with a few different resources for the dad and for the mom, separate resources, and they also asked for our address. And they also sent us a huge care package as well. One of the things that I found so profound was just how important is the getting the right support and resources for both of us. So I needed my support system, my friends, my resources. Mayor reached out to his friends, leaned on the support system for him and how dads grieve a pregnancy loss. It's so different. It's so different, right? The other layer of just navigating this journey was Mayor still very much in the throes of grief for his dad who passed away at the end of March. And I have been really carrying the home in so many different ways over the last several months. And so when I experienced the miscarriage and I was thrown into my own world of grief and brain fog and forgetting things and just anxiety and all of those things, and I'll talk about anxiety in a moment, I really needed Mayor to hold me and hold the house up. But he also had like such limited capacity just for what he was navigating. And I remember we went out to dinner one night and I was like, we got to come together, and it's us against the problem. Like it's us against what we're dealing with here, because we're each in our own worlds. We each want the other person to support us. We each want the other person to just know what we need without communicating it, because we're both so fatigued, exhausted, tapped out, and we're going to start turning on each other, and we have to be here for one another. So anyways, we were kind of talking through it, and Mayor's like, you know what we should do? We should retake um, uh, the 5 love languages quiz by Gary Chapman. I was like, I love it. Let's do it right now. We each take out our phones. We open it up. It's a free quiz on. Just Google it. Takes like 3 minutes. We take the quiz. And I was like, answer the questions in the emotional state that you're in right now. Like, not how you usually answer it, like just in the emotional state that we're in now, that we find ourselves in. What is our love language now? So, anyways, we each answer the questions. We swap phones. We each look at what the other person has, and that's phase 1, right? But then the bottom line is, when you're in grief, and for those of you that have navigated grief, the habits and the rituals of being there for another person, they're not habits and rituals anymore because you are in such self-preservation. And I was like, we're each in self-preservation. So we need reminders to be there for the other person. While usually when we're not in this season, we have rituals and habits and we see each other and I don't need a reminder on my phone to pour into Mayor's bucket. I know what I need to do. And he knows what he needs to do. But when we're both in self-preservation mode, how are we going to make sure to be there for each other? And this is often what I teach in schools of excellence, where I talk about the gratitude matrix and why it is so important to put inside of your calendar blocks of time for gratitude, because you think that you're going around and giving teachers appreciation, but you're not. You're always going to forget the teachers that don't stand out. And when you are in self-preservation, you're not going to remember. And so we took time right there in the restaurant to put in each of our calendars blocks of time, to remember to pour into the other person's love tank, their love language. And this, it was about like 2.5 weeks, maybe even a little bit less, where we intentionally like honored the time blocks. And then eventually it kind of just came back to second nature, right? Where we were pouring into each other again. But we had this season of 2 weeks where we needed to respect the block, where it said, do this or do this action item or whatever it is. And it didn't matter. Like, I remember one time I was like, but it feels so forced. It feels like, oh my God, there was a block of time at 6 o'clock to do that. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if there was a reminder at 6 o'clock to do X, Y, and Z. The bottom line is it made me feel better. Eventually, you don't need that block of time. But in the beginning, when you're in such survival mode, you need that. And so many times I think we get so stuck up on what society has to say. It's like, who effing cares what society has to say if I put a block of time that says, remember to pour into my husband's love tank? They're not living with each other. They're not living with us. We're living with us. We need to feel like we're there for each other. And that's why I'm saying this story. And it's a personal story because I want you to know, like, stop subscribing to what feels normal or feels whatever. Like, do what makes sense for you guys as a couple, as a parent, as whatever it is. Like it's okay to put a reminder if you need a reminder to pour into your spouse's bucket when you are in a season of self-preservation. So, a couple of final points here. And I know this episode is a little bit longer, it's a personal story. As I was in that kind of season of postpartum for about 6 to 8 weeks after, it's not like the world stops, right? When someone's going through grief and they wake up in the morning and like everyone's like going around doing carpals and it's like, hello, like, do you like, how is the world continuing? But it does, the world continues. And I still have to make decisions and I still have to show up for work and I still have to do things. And so my anxiety was in levels that it was, I was not coping. And so when I spoke with my therapist about it, she had given me some exercises to work with, which were super helpful. But the biggest thing was, she's like, you need a reset. You need to go back to your anchors of what got you out of survival to begin with, which is more rest, lots of white space on your calendar, doing nothing, not committing to anything. And that's when I booked a spa day. I spent a whole day at the spa, at the beach, left my phone away, just did nothing. And that definitely did like a big reset on my nervous system. Still doing a lot of those things. And when I look at going to the beach for 3 hours, for those of you that are listening, like, from a school leader perspective or a priority perspective, like going to the beach for 3 hours in this season of life that I'm in, that's a $10,000 an hour task. Because when I actually go do that activity, not only is it helping me regulate myself and calm myself down and be a better leader, like I need this activity to work at my best, to be at optimal speed. So taking 3 hours instead of like, oh, but you could be recording something, but you could, no, I can't be doing anything because my brain is a mess if I'm not going to go do that. So that was a huge part in helping me really recover and probably bounce back the fastest that I ever have when I'm feeling that kind of intensity of anxiety. So I want to leave you with this before my final message. If you have listened until now, I know that you have or are in the process of navigating intense loss, grief, going through something really hard, whatever it is. And our society is a long way to go. in helping us be okay with asking for help and reaching out for help. And there is no way that I could be where I am today without the help and support that I reached out to. My friends, our mentors, my family members, my parents, Mayor's mother, all the people that we reached out to support us and help us. And I truly believe that for those of you that are listening, you have a support system, but you're afraid to reach out to that support system. I remember when I was flying to New York the 2 days after the surgery, I like to pre-download podcasts that I could listen to on the flight. And so I went into the search engine in Apple Podcasts and I wrote miscarriage because I wanted to listen to other people's stories. Every single story that I listened to, I probably listened to about 10 or 12 stories. Every story, while it was so different, a lot of the themes were the same. It was, I was all alone and I had to do this all alone. And that's why, I created this. And that's why I'm sharing my story. I was all alone. And every single story was some version of going through it alone. Whether the woman shared that her husband was not supportive, or, her parents were unsupportive, or she didn't have any friends, or, she went back to work and her boss was like, why are you still crying? Like, you need to just get back to yourself already. It's been 3 months. Every person had a different story. And I was like, when am I going to hear a story of someone who went through this through the absolute unconditional loving embrace of their partner? Who has gone through this while being carried by their community, by their spiritual leader, by their friends, by their family? Who has gone through this and has not only like had support, but physically been just held up by people and by love, and by unconditional, unwavering support? And no one had that story. And I'm like, I need to record a conversation where this is a story that exists. And to live and to be human is to experience loss and pain, and it's also joy and support and community. But loss and grief and pain are unavoidable in this world. They're just unavoidable in our lifetime. And we need to normalize going through hard things with support, with community, linking arms with people that will walk over broken glass for you and be there for you. And I am so blessed to have this type of support system. And Mayor and I work for this kind of support system. We pour into our community, we give back to our community, we contribute to our community with our time, with our money, with our resources, with our energy. Like, we pour into our relationships because we know that community is everything. And life works in a cycle of life. It's, in Hebrew, it's called the Galgal HaChayzer, which is like the circle of life is constantly turning. And sometimes you're in the season where you're the giver and you're the contributor and you're the person that's showing up for everyone. And sometimes God is going to put you in a season where you are the receiver, where you are the person that needs to sit back and let people give to you, and you will be the receiver and you will be the vessel that people are going to pour into. And we need to normalize being okay with that. We cannot be in relationships where we're only the giver, where we're only the contributor, where we pour and pour and pour and we never get back. We cannot be in relationships like that. It has to be healthy interdependence. And it's not about obligation. It's the beautiful reciprocity and generosity of just having the privilege to show up and give and be there for someone else. So to all of you that are facing similar challenges, it's okay to be okay. And it's also okay to not be okay. It's okay to find joy again. It's okay to be sad. And it's okay to move forward while honoring your loss. Seek the support. Be kind to yourself. And the biggest thing that I've realized here is healing is such a journey. It is not a destination. There is no summit. There is no top of the mountain. And, the beautiful double heart ring that I wear is a daily reminder of the precious soul that I carried, right? Even for such a short period of time. It's a symbol of love, of remembrance, and of the endurance of the human spirit to keep living, to keep loving, even in the face of loss. I made it through the whole episode, and at the end, I get emotional. It's part of life. So I hope that today's conversation has really brought you comfort, perhaps a new perspective, and please share this with anyone who you feel needs to hear it. Please share it with just your friends, your family, your partner. We need to get a story that you're stronger than you know, that it's okay to be okay, that we need to lean on community. I love you all and send you all the best. Thanks for listening. If you are loving the Schools of Excellence podcast and have gotten any value out of it for your school and for yourself, I would love if you can do two things for me. One, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And two, can you please leave us a review? Reviews help other school leaders know that this is the podcast to learn about building a school of excellence. And I'd be so grateful if you can do that for us. Your help and support make this show be able to listen to by thousands of other school leaders around the globe. Thanks so much for listening and giving us your time and attention each week.